Stories of Futures Past presents 10 short stories, aka Flash Fiction, Volume 4. I'll See You Tomorrow by Ben Smith. The Missing Disclaimer by Sam Sackett. The Customs Lounge by Annie Proulx. Ultimatum by Roger Dee. My Robot by Henry Slesar. Spies Die Hard by Arnold Marmor. Nothing by Donald A. Wollheim. Dogfight, 1973 by Mack Reynolds. The Futile Flight of John Arthur Benn by Richard Wilson. Printcrime by Cory Doctorow. I'll See You Tomorrow by Ben Smith, originally published in Cosmos Science Fiction, July 1954. Narrated by Tom Trussel. "Wait," Henry Bitts said. They were in the front of a pawn shop, and Henry stood there, the new camera slung from his shoulder, his eyes unfocused, peering into some greater distance. Duane Morton paused, outwardly patient. "You said you had it figured out," he prompted. "Yes." Henry touched his tongue to dry lips, conscious of the rather seedy reflection of a little man that faced him in the pawnshop window. It had been a wonderful thing. The new speed graphic, bought from a year's savings, the job with a bunch at the Globe, the friendship of Duane Morton. The two wonderful things in Henry's world, Duane and Dorothy. Henry was unconscious of Morton's impatience as his mind turned over the hours of the past year as if there had been the pages in a book. The first and greatest scene, of course, was the memory of the day when Dorothy had agreed to marry him. Of all the men she had known, Duane, Hallie, Shorty, the entire staff of the Globe, she had chosen an inoffensive little man who made a sometimes living in a photography shop. Henry Bitts caught his breath because the recollection was edged with pain. "You have a knack for photography," Dorothy had said, and Henry felt again the urgency in her voice. It had been a warm night so long ago, and Dorothy had been sweetly desirable in her short-sleeved linen frock. It had been a night for dreaming, and Dorothy had been the foundation for his dream. A knack for photography Henry Bitts might have, but not a knack for making money, and Dorothy's linen dress and all the other beautiful clothes she bought back when she had been working soon became shabby. It was then that Henry had taken what little money they had and bought the camera. After that, Hallie gave him a job. "Hallie's a good guy," Morton's voice brought Henry back to the present. "He'll take you back after he gets over his mad spell." "No." Henry shook his rather narrow, balding head regretfully. "There's no chance of that." His eyes, squinted from too many hours under a ruby light, passed over the heterogeny of the pawn-shop window. "I told you I had it figured out." Morton took an impatient step, swinging his broad shoulders irritably. "I'll talk to Hallie." "No." Henry's thin fingers caught at Morton's tweeded sleeve. "No. It's not on account of me that I hate to get fired. It's Dorothy. You know how women are. Even with me working nights, she had the money to have a good time once in a while. And you've been a good friend to us, taking her. But it's me. I mean about the pictures. There's something about me that makes a camera act the way it does." "You're crazy." Henry Bitts nodded his head wearily. "I guess I am," he replied, and again his mind looked into the past. That had been a honey of an angle shot he had worked out. from the roof of the tool shed, obliquely centering upon the rotund figure of the mayor, presumably doing something important about the new high school's cornerstone. Henry Bitts could again feel the warm touch of the afternoon breeze. He had been on the day trick then, and from below the voices of the spectators had risen in a pleasant murmur. Across the field, so soon to be covered by an educational plant of imposing brick, tall grass undulated. The mayor had turned, arm upflung, asking for silence, and Henry Bitts had tripped his speed graphic. A beautiful shot. "Remember that, Mort?" he asked softly, and wondered that his voice could remain calm. "I told you about it, but the plate was a washout, and Hallie thought I had forgotten to remove the lens cover, and he kicked me downstairs to the night trick with Shorty." "But you got a pic," Morton protested, much as if reasoning with a child. "You simply shot too high, Henry, and missed the ceremony. You got an angle view of the field." "No." Now that Henry Bitts could see the course of the next few moments, he was calm. As calm as Joanne Morton, and the suave, dashing Globe reporter was noted for his own level head. "I've always envied you, Mort," Henry continued quietly. "I wanted to be like you, as much as I could. You made money, you wore good clothes, and if you ever married, your wife would have the things she wanted. Dorothy, she married me, Mort, but maybe she should have married you." Morton interrupted swiftly, his greenish eyes hooded. "Don't talk like that." His words were torn apart by the thunder of a passing bus, the quick whoop of a boy on a bicycle. "You'll drive yourself nuts. Henry, a camera's a piece of machinery, and the picture it takes is what the lens sees. What if they did find a bug in the works, something about a condemned sewer, and changed their plans about the high school? They had the ceremony, didn't they? And you took a picture, didn't you?" Henry Bitts felt the last of his uncertainty vanish. Morton, this brawny, handsome, well-dressed and well-paid Globe man about town. Mort's voice was shaking. "A piece of machinery?" Henry Bitts' voice was thoughtful. "No, not with me, Mort. Look at this." He swung his speed graphic before him, and the sunlight winked from the polished chrome. "When I push the release, something happens. I took a picture that day at the site of the new high school, Mort. I took other pictures. But when they were developed—" His voice trailed off uncertainly. "Mort!" Henry's face was white, and his throat was dry again. All the fear came flooding back, and the horrible knowledge. "I take pictures of things as they will be." "Look, Henry, I know a doctor. He'll help you, and Hallie." "Shut up, Mort." "Well, okay." Joanne Morton looked through the dingy window at the pawn-shop and was suddenly afraid. "Let's go, Henry." "Not yet." Henry Bitts's voice rose shrilly, and a man pushing a street cleaner's cart looked up, startled. "I take a picture in the morning, and when it's developed I wind up with a shot of the same place. Later! I took a snap of some swans in Richard's Lake, 2 of them, and when Shorty ran the print through, there were 5. The young had hatched. Oh, God!" There was nothing profane in the tortured word. Henry Bitts's eyes were wet with tears. "Mort, I take pictures of the future." "Easy, Henry." Joanne Morton stepped close, placed an arm across the little man's trembling shoulders. "Easy. It might be a good thing." His lips were stiff with the attempt at jocularity. "Think of the killing you could make at the races." "Killing?" Henry Bitts calmed suddenly. "Yes." His voice was again almost toneless. "Taking pictures of the future could be very valuable, Mort. It has been to me. I've been working nights for weeks, kind of missed out on what was going on. I can't be blamed in any way. Can I, Mort?" A burly policeman walked by, twirling his nightstick. He stopped behind them, his voice thick and Irish. "Your buddy sick or something?" No, officer, I'm all right." Henry Bitts waited until the blue uniform was out of sight. His eyes squinted up at Morton, watching the tinge of the big man's exasperation and embarrassment. Henry Bitts even smiled a little. "I even took a picture of Dorothy yesterday," he said softly. "Mort, a picture of the future is a handy gadget. She had been out to the grocery and had her hair up in those little metal do-fannies. Before I thought, I snapped her as she came in the door. Was she mad?" Joanne Morton laughed, and there was relief in the sound. Henry would be all right now. He was just kind of a nut, that was all. A kind of a dumb nut. But why was his voice so low, choking out the words? "I developed the picture, Mort." Henry swung his camera abruptly, rubbing the bright surfaces with his thumb. "You look at it while I go in here." And Henry Bitts handed Joanne Morton the picture of Dorothy. The picture that, through some unknown alchemy, was of another time. The picture that showed a gloriously happy Dorothy clasped in Joanne Morton's arms, her full lips to his. Henry Bitts went into the pawn shop and traded his speed graphic for a gun. The end. Subscribe for your daily stories of futures past. And now, for the next story. The Missing Disclaimer by Sam Sackett, originally published in Imagination Stories of Science and Fantasy, November 1954. Narrated by Tom Trussel. Mr. Young came bounding into the office of Atomic Science Stories, waving a copy of the first issue in his hand. He stopped at the desk of the editor, Art Holderness. "Holderness!" he roared, his chins quivering. "You're fired!" Holderness looked up in surprise. "Why?" he asked. "Look at this contents page." Holderness looked at it. "What's the matter with it?" "Don't you see anything wrong?" "No, what shouldn't be there?" "There isn't anything shouldn't be there, you idiot. There's something missing." "What?" "Our announcement that the characters and situation in these stories bear no resemblance to actual persons living or dead." "Oh." "Is that all you have to say? Think of the libel suits. We'll be ruined. I don't know why I let myself be talked into adding a science fiction book anyway. Holderness, you're fired." "But, Mr. Young—" "You have no idea the trouble we can get into leaving that announcement off. Get out of this office." K-17 removed a copy of Atomic Science Stories from the newsstand and went up to his hotel room. He sat down to read it. He had been attracted by the picture of the spaceship on the cover, because it reminded him very much of the one in which he had come to Earth from Rigel 4. And then, when he looked closer at it, he discovered that the 4 tentacled purple creatures in the ship looked not a little like his fellow Rigelians. This made him homesick, and so, in direct defiance of the orders he had received from his superiors, he pulled down the shades and turned off the gadget that set up the hypnotic field around him. Once more he was 4-tentacled and purple, instead of 2-armed and pink, and it felt good. He began to read through the stories. The first of them concerned an invader from another planet who was on Earth disguised as a man. "Good Vogue," K-17 thought to himself. "They're on to us." He looked over the story again. They had some of the details wrong, of course, such as saying that the Rigelians, whom they called the Capellans for some strange reason, had mouths like octopi, whereas actually they had no mouths at all. But on the whole, it was a circumstantial and convincing account of the capture of a Rigelian spy. The story had taken place in Philadelphia. That meant they had M22. This was serious. He picked up his magneto-oscillophone and called the home base on the other side of the moon. "This is K-17, he reported. I have just read in a Terran publication details on the capture of M22. Impossible, the voice snorted in his auditory nerve. We have been receiving regular reports from M22. They must have replaced him with a human spy, K-17 mused. Good Vog, do you really think so? It's the only explanation. Good work, K-17. We'll be on our guard. K-17 hung up and sat down again to read further. The next story dealt with an Earth landing on Mars. But Earthmen hadn't landed on Mars. Or had they? This situation was becoming complicated. K-17 thought of all the possibilities. Was it possible that this magazine contained only fiction? The title of the thing was Atomic Science Stories. He remembered that he had read a similar magazine called Impossible Science Fiction. Was a distinction between stories and fiction significant? A fiction was obviously false, but a story could be any narrative, true or not. Did this mean? Good Vog, he wished he knew more about Earth culture, but that was what he was here to find out. They knew nothing, absolutely nothing about Earth people, and they didn't want to try to kill the inhabitants and take over the planet without knowing more about them. He looked closely at the title page of Atomic Science Stories. He recalled that impossible science fiction, which he had, of course, read every word of, carried an announcement that all the stories were fiction. He did not see any such announcement on the title page of Atomic. Doubt was wavering into certainty in his mind. He telephoned the offices of the young publishing company which published the magazine. The secretary informed him that the editor, Mr. Holderness, had been discharged that very morning. Discharged? K-17 meditated. Why discharged? Well, he told himself, if Earth had space travel and was keeping it a secret, and if a magazine violated its security precautions and published a story about it, of course they'd discharge the editor. If it was a fiction magazine, that would be different. But a magazine that printed stories, some of them true, like the one about the capture of M22. He called headquarters again, on his magneto-oscillophone. Earth has space travel, he announced breathlessly. What? Don't be silly. The voice in his auditory nerve was irritated. A magazine published an account of it, and the editor was discharged this morning for security reasons. What? Are you sure? I just telephoned the office of the magazine and verified everything. Report to the source estate immediately. You're coming back to headquarters. We'll get out the word to all of our other operatives. Except M22. Yes, of course. We'll have to leave him behind. It's really too bad. The planet offered such nice possibilities. They hung up. No, Holderness, Mr. Fribble said. Our magazine can't use you either. We can't have an editor who's careless enough to leave off the standard disclaimer. Well, there's no end of trouble we'd get into without that little announcement.
The end. Subscribe for your daily stories of futures past. And now, for the next story.
The Customs Lounge by Annie Proulx, writing as E.A. Proulx. Originally published in Worlds of If, September 1963. Narrated by Tom Trussel. There were usually a few customs inspectors in the lounge, waiting to begin their shifts, hanging around, trading news and incidents, and drinking the bad, lukewarm cassa that was a standing joke in the Immigration Customs Service. Old Grag was telling, for perhaps the 80th time, of a success of his when he was young in the service. They had this small box of sticky, squashy sweets with them. The young one was eating one. Many another inspector would have passed them through, but I thought the young one chewed too much and too loud. So I said, Mind if I have one? Wah, says they together. It would set you on edge, noble wise inspector. It is the taste of another world. They was Venusians, and they started shifting and hopping around and humming their national anthem. You know how they used to do back in the old days.
I made quite a nice little find. Almost a half scree of chamfer in each one of those suites. I got a promotion out of that, and the Venusians got a 6 years close-out." Inspector Flimp blew one of his noses loudly. "That's nothing. I recall back when we first opened up for immigration, and a whole shipload of earthers came in. They were crammed in like tigs in a nest, and as usual, they didn't know one word of the language. They didn't have any idea of where to go or how to do anything, and they got separated from the controller. They just stood around, huddled together, and jabbering at each other. Well, I checked out about 20 of them, and then there comes up this big, ugly female. Well, I jacks the elevator up some more, and I looks down at her. 'Name,' I call. 'Gladys Cracklegill,' or some other weird earth name she screams at me. 'Too much name,' I say. 'You've got enough name there for 5 of you. Which will you choose? Glad, Is, Crack, El, or Gill?' Well, it took me a while to make her understand me. My Earth accent wasn't too good then, and she was slow-headed, having only one, like all Earthers. But I finally made her understand what I wanted to know, and then, by Clag, what a ramping frowst she did make. It was while she was screeching at me that I noticed her teeth were pretty big, even for such a huge beast as she was. So I secretly turned on the Dento Spire, right into her jaws, and what a sight on the view screen! Each of those big teeth was false, and filled to the top with earth seeds she was trying to smuggle. "Earthers!" exploded young Nask. "They make me sick!" "I'm with you, Nask," said Inspector Sprim, "and I don't understand why they still keep routing Earthers through immigration anyway. They claim they're a borderline case, but when you've seen as many as I have, you know which side of the border they're on." Nask went off to the Casa dispenser, and his place was taken by Briff, the head inspector, who had been listening. "Unedge yourself, Sprim," smiled Briff, contracting one of his heads. "I have good news, rare news, and fine news. The 4-council decision just came down to us. Earthers are now to be routed through livestock instead of immigration beginning very soon." A cheer went up from the little group of customs and immigration officials. The one livestock inspector in the lounge groaned in despair. Old Inspector Flimp seemed bothered. "They've made themselves a mistake," he sputtered. "Earthers can be clever and tricky even after they've altered. Why, I've seen them pull every trick in the book coming through here. Did I ever tell you about the stunted one with an artificial head who tried to pass himself off as a rest park planner? Well, it seems that—" 2 young but large inspectors sneaked away from the group when they saw old Flimp was launched into one of his dull yarns again. Outside the lounge, after a quick look up and down the hall, they ducked into the robot cleaner storage closet. "Boy," gasped the shorter inspector, "I had to get out of there. Besides the torture of listening to that 2-headed monster babble on and on about how he outwitted Earthers when he was still able to move around, the miserable thing has started to come loose again." He gave an impatient wrench to his left head, and it wobbled enough to expose some of the delicate wires that the Earth robotic engineer had laboured over so many hours. The other began tightening straps and buckles for him. "There," he said finally, "you look like one of the boys again." Laughing together, the Earthers went back into the customs lounge.
The end. Subscribe for your daily stories of futures past. And now, for the next story.
Ultimatum by Roger D. Aycock, writing as Roger Dee. Originally published in Planet Stories, Spring 1950. Narrated by Tom Trussel. Winant followed the lanky sheriff down the jail corridor past rows of empty plank-walled cells and drew a sharp breath of relief when they found the last cubicle still tenanted. "That's Uncle Ivor all right," Winant said,
Sorry he caused you so much trouble, Sheriff, but I'll be glad to pay his fine. What's the charge against him?" The sheriff rubbed a palm across his drooping moustaches and looked doubtfully at the old man who sat on the edge of the cell bunk, the bald dome of his head cradled dejectedly in his hands. "You couldn't rightly say there is a charge, mister," he admitted. "Your uncle popped into Ben Stewart's drop-in restaurant night before last with a little black box under his arm, naked as a jaybird and talking like a crazy man. 'I'm a visitor from Mars,' he says. 'Take me to your president, and quick.' Ben thought he was crazy or drunk and ran him out with a meat cleaver, and the old duck went down to the Warner Hotel and pulled the same goofy act. Pop Warner called me, and I went down and threw the old coot into the cooler. I knew right off that he was cracked, because I even had to show him how to put on the clothes I brought him. And the wingding he pitched when I took that black box away from him. Wow." Winant shook his head. "Poor Uncle Ivor," he said commiseratingly. "The last time he got away from us, he thought he was Mahatma Gandhi and tried to buy a bus ticket from Cincinnati to New Delhi, India. I found him finally in Evansville, Indiana. It's amazing how he got this far south, but then a mentally unbalanced person can do surprising things sometimes." The sheriff snorted. "Unbalanced, hell," he said. "The old coot's crazy as a bedbug. Just got in from Mars, he says, and he wants the President of the United States, on the double." He unlocked the door, and Winant went inside. "It's all right now, Uncle Ivor," he said gently. The old man raised a wrinkled, leathery face and stared at him uncomprehendingly. "Let's go over to my hotel and get a good meal and a hot bath," Winant urged. "Then we'll go home again. Ready now?" A few minutes later, in the jail office, the sheriff pocketed the bill Winant gave him and handed over a small lacquered metal box that was surprisingly heavy for its size. "Here's your uncle's radio," he said. "Newfangled model, I reckon. I couldn't make head nor tail of it, so I just left it alone." Winant lifted the hinged cover and looked inside the box at the neat array of tiny meters and knobs that covered the control panel. "A wise decision, Sheriff," he said dryly. "Wiser, perhaps, than you'll ever know." The old man stood in the centre of Winant's hotel room, the sheriff's ill-fitting denims hanging on his slight frame like the cast-off clothing of a scarecrow. "The box," he said. His voice, after talking for so long, was a hoarse, rasping croak. "Give me the box." Winant sat in a decrepit wicker chair, holding the box in his lap, his eyes missing no detail of the old man's shrunken figure with its bald dome-like head and wrinkled parchment face. "I'll give you the box when you tell me something that makes sense," he said. "What you've just told me is nothing but a rehash of the story you told the sheriff, that your name is Yardana, and that you are an envoy from Mars sent to Earth to help scientific authorities develop safe atomic power. Look, I'm a news writer, down here to investigate the rumors of a blue meteorite landing in the hills just north of here, and to check up on the comic accounts I read of your appearance. I went to a lot of trouble and some risk to get you out of jail, and I want a reasonable story for my trouble. What about it now?" The old man wrung his hands. "Give me the box! Give me the box!" "Later," Winant promised. "When you give me the real story behind this thing, I'll not only give you back your box, I'll give you a lift out of this burg as well." He looked at the old man sharply. "How could a Martian speak the kind of English you've been using? Why should a Martian look so much like an ordinary human being? It doesn't add up." "We are of the same root stock," Yardana said. "Intelligent life follows the same evolutionary pattern, no matter where it develops, so long as conditions are the same. As for the language, my people have followed your experiments with electromagnetics since their beginning. We know every language of Earth intimately, through long study of your radio programs." Winant laughed. "Maybe the sheriff was right at that," he said. "It's a goofy story, too fantastic for belief." He shrugged and handed the old man the black box. "Here's your toy," he said resignedly. "I guess that's all I'm going to get for my trouble. Just enough misinformation for another tongue-in-cheek article for Sunday supplements. He picked up his briefcase from the floor and laid it on the corner of the writing table at his elbow. The lift I promised you still goes if you want it, but it'll have to wait until tomorrow. The old man took the black box eagerly and threw back the cover. His fingers flickered over the controls with practiced familiarity. "I shall not need your assistance now," he said. His pale eyes met Winant's triumphantly. "Now that I have the bubble again, I have a means of return to my ship better than any earthly conveyance could offer. Watch." From the black box swelled a pulsing radiance, a misty rose-tinted sphere that grew swiftly until it enveloped Yardana in a 6-foot bubble of iridescent light. Through its wavering envelope, the old man's face showed taut and purposeful, its pleading replaced by grim determination. "Print your story," he said. "Tell your people about Yardana and his mission. Tell them, too, that their days are numbered from this minute, for in their savage perversion of natural principles to warlike uses, they have forged a menace that threatens the peace of the solar system and eventually of the universe itself." He moved toward the window, the rosy bubble glowing about him. Winant turned his chair slightly, watching, but he did not rise. "My people knew the secrets of the atom," Yardana said, "before your own learned the use of fire. We built great cities and telescopes when your ancestors were troglodytes, living in caves and eating uncooked meat. We expected no dangerous intelligence to arise on your planet for thousands of years as yet, and we paid little attention to your progress until recently, when we learned through your radio broadcasts that you had cracked the atom. We knew then that something was dangerously wrong, and that we must investigate quickly before your sudden wisdom put you upon equal footing with us. Today, when you should be only learning to compound gunpowder, we found you applying electromagnetic principles which you cannot possibly understand, and harnessing the atom for the sole purpose of killing greater numbers of your fellow beings. I came here, not to aid your scientists in developing the rudiments of the atomic power they have discovered, but to find the reason behind the sudden freakish intelligence they are displaying. I have discovered that reason. The scientific and political powers of Earth are under the domination and guidance of alien intelligences, entities bent upon developing a race of Earthmen so warlike and so technically proficient in the waging of war that it must endanger our own Martian culture. Winant sat unmoving, his eyes not leaving the Martian's wrinkled face. The bubble hissed audibly, its tiny susurration suddenly loud in the room. Therefore, I shall recommend in my report that the human race be completely destroyed, Yardana said. Alone, it could not offer a serious threat against us for ages, but led and instructed by these outside intelligences, it must soon surpass our own scientific development, and we must destroy you before you learn the secret of space travel, or we shall be too late to save ourselves. We fought with the peoples of Venus once in ages past for the same reason, and reduced them to inconsequence, if not to extinction. For no sign of intelligent life has been detected upon their world since we blasted it 3,000 years ago. When I have made my report, the Council of Elders will recommend the blasting of Earth, and the solar system will be safe again for our superior Martian civilization. This time, forever. When you have made your report, Winant said. His smile was edged with a sudden secret amusement. But suppose these alien entities prevent your return. He opened the briefcase on the table and put a hand inside it. The Martian laughed harshly. No missile can penetrate a bubble, you fool, he said contemptuously. It is impervious to any earthly weapon. Winant laughed in turn, his lips pressed back flat against his teeth. The repressed hatred of 3,000 years spoke in his voice, added pressure to the thrust of his thumb on the stud of the little silver tube in his hand. "Of course it is," he said, as a sullen crimson ray from the tube disintegrated Martian, books, and bubble alike in a breath. "That's why I came prepared, with a Venusian weapon."
The end. Subscribe for your daily stories of futures past. And now, for the next story. My Robot by Henry Slesar, writing as O. H. Leslie. Originally published in Fantastic, February 1957. Narrated by Tom Trussel. How I wish 4-4 were here. What a joy to be a child again, and sit once more in his strong wide lap, and rest my fevered cheek against the cool metal surface of his chest, and let my sticky, stumpy fingers play idly over the buttons of his back, and finally press down the one that brought forth his soothing, smoothing, story-telling voice. There was once a shoemaker who through no fault of his own had become so poor that at last he had only leather enough for one pair of shoes. Oh, 4-4, what have they done with you? Memory, memory, so sweet, so painful. What was the rhyme that father taught me? The rhyme that told me how 4-4 worked. Information, registration, consideration, memory, calculation, conversation, robots made by Emery. My father. A big man, a brilliant man, and I was an Emery too. And when I grew up, great things were expected of me. For didn't I have 4-4? What child could cope for a better tutor? Information, registration, consideration, memory. Oh, 4-4, how could I have ever hated your cold, cruel chest, your icy arms, your frozen mechanical affection? How could I have struck your brain housing with such fury, beating the heavy hammer in great gongs? Yes, father, I deserved your punishment. You were right. I was wrong. Again, only beat me again. How could I feel such gross ingratitude again? My mother, "He's only a child," shrieking at him. "He's only 7. How soon his red anger died. Remorse, regret, eyes staring in bewilderment at the thick brown strap in his hand. "He could have destroyed him," he said, in a voice I didn't know. "He could have smashed the work of a lifetime. 44 experiments, 12 years, and he could have—" Oh, father, how I wronged you! Again. But how soon I learned. Cold steel or warm flesh, how little the difference really mattered. My mother's sleepy-time kiss, once so sweet and comforting. My father's gruff hair-rumpling. How trivial these childhood pleasures seemed after the lessons of 4-4, the strength of 4-4, the quick thrilling response of 4-4 to every childish command. Oh, 4-4, how well I learned your ways. Information, registration, consideration, memory. "A whole year?" I said. "Maybe a little less," said my mother. "It's a very important assignment," said my father. "A great honor," said my mother, stroking my hair, as if to comfort me. "It's a government project, and very secret. Can you understand that?" Your mother and I will be living in very cramped quarters and leading greatly restricted lives. There won't be any playgrounds, or children your own age, or anything." "And besides," said my mother, was that a tear on her face, "you'll have Aunt Huldah and Forfor, of course." "You'll be all right," said my father, as if he really knew. Was I happy? Was I sad? Forfor, do you remember? What did I say to you that night in the aloneness of my room? Did I cry? On the lap, head against the chest, press the button, drowsy listening, soothing, smoothing, storytelling voice. Now the Queen, having eaten Snow White's heart, as she supposed, felt quite sure that now she was the first and fairest, and so she came to her mirror and said, "Information, registration, consideration, memory." "Say that again! You heard me. I dare you to say it again. You're an orphan. I heard my mother say so. You ain't got no father. You're a liar. Who's a liar? Who's a liar? I'll show you who's a liar." A scuffle in the sand. A hard ball of fingers on my nose, blood on my shirt, yelling, screaming, crying. "I'm not an orphan. I'm not." "I'll learn you who's a liar. I'll show you, little snot-nosed stupid orphan." Hot tears, shameless, screaming, screaming. "Forfor! Forfor!" pounding on my ribs, then, "Holy Christmas! Holy! Revenge, Forfor! Revenge!" "Ma! Ma!" "Hold him, Forfor! Punch him, Forfor! Bloody nose, Forfor! Bloodier than mine! Revenge! Revenge, Forfor! Revenge!" Information, registration, consideration, memory. "Oh, he's been a good boy, Mr. Emery," said Aunt Huldah. "But he broke the nose of the brown boy," she added. "He did what?" said my father. Would the thick brown strap, the sudden red anger, appear again? I cringed. But father laughed. "Well, well, well!" He laughed again, and squeezed my upper arm. I had pleased him. "Oh, Forfor, I love you best, but that moment was sweet, sweet." "He's a real Emery," my father said. "A real Emery. But don't tell his mother, Huldah. She wouldn't understand." "It was Forfor," I said. The honesty of childhood. "Of course it was." My father smiled with pleasure at my robot. "He's a better teacher than I imagined. Now I don't feel so bad about leaving again." My mother came in. "Leaving again?" I said to her. "Was I sad, Forfor? Did I cry?" "The experiments aren't completed," my mother answered. "Your father and I will have to stay at least another 6 months." Father said, "But it's worth it, son. There may be a whole army of Forfors some day." "A whole army?" My mother looked frightened. "It's dreadful, Richard, dreadful." "Laura." "Metal soldiers, robot killers." My father looked displeased. "This is no time for that kind of talk. You knew full well what my assignment was about. I'm not ashamed of it." He looked at me sternly. "And don't you be either. Some day you may be carrying on my work. Do you know that?" My mother's face went white. "My robots will do all the world's work," my father said. "Not just the fighting. But they know a lot about that, too." He turned his eyes on me again, significantly, and he smiled. In the middle of that night, awakening suddenly, hearing an unexpected sound, my mother sobbing, sobbing. My father, whispering harshly, so close to red anger. "Oh, shut up, Laura! For heaven's sake, shut up!" "Oh, 4-4, quick, tell me a story." The wide lap, the cool chest, the soothing voice. Once upon a time there lived a king and a queen, very peacefully together. Information, registration, consideration, memory. Only a rhyme, but... Sick? Sick? With what? Tell me that. With what? My mother, drawn and pale, the plump hand that we could touch so gently, now thin and bony, clutching the sheet. Softly, "I don't know, Richard." "The doctors should know, Laura. The hospital should know. Do you doubt what they said?" "No, I don't doubt them." 4-4, why was I so frightened? "They've seen cases like yours before, those army doctors. They have an ugly word for it in the army, Laura." "Richard, I'm sorry." Anger, red anger. Would he take the thick brown strap to her? Oh, never, 4-4, never! 2 years of work, 2 years, and now that pipsqueak Morgan is filling in for me. It's just not fair, don't you see that? And all because you think you're sick. Richard! Never mind, never mind. I've stood by your bedside long enough. Huldah can take care of you. You don't need me. You have what you want. You'll be home to smother that boy with sticky love. You'll be happy. But I must get back to work. Why did I cry, 4-4? What frightened me so? Richard, please. What is it? Don't go back. What? Don't go back there. Don't help them make those monsters. My mother, up on her feet, following him to the door. She looked so small. Why, my mother was small. Don't be a fool, Laura. It's a sin to make them, a mortal sin. Getting awfully religious, aren't you? This isn't like you, Laura. Clutching at him, tugging, pulling. Richard, don't go. You're hysterical. Let go of me and get back to bed. That's the only place you feel important, isn't it? I won't let you go. I won't. Tugging, pulling. Oh, 4-4, why did I have to watch? Stop it, Laura. Shrieking, crying. Richard! Richard! Oh, 4-4, did it really happen? The upraised arm, that hard, flat palm, the sharp, cracking noise, the moan of shock and pain. Oh, 4-4, did it really happen? Revenge, 4-4. What have they done with him? Dismantled him, fused him, melted him, battered him, crushed him. Has his metal become bullets, gun barrels, bombshells? Or were the bars on the windows of my room once this strong, cool chest, his sturdy legs, his comforting arms? Oh, 4-4, my robot, how I wish you were here.
The end. Subscribe for your daily stories of futures past. And now, for the next story. Spies Die Hard by Arnold Marmor. Originally published in Imagination, May 1954. Narrated by Tom Trussel. This man is a spy for Earth. A voice droned as the telecaster vibrated and a photo of Harry Horn flashed on the screen. 10,000 credits for this man, dead or alive. Contact Slesar of the security police. Harry Horn, 34, 5 feet 11 inches, 172 pounds. Lynn Brickle snapped off the humming machine. She frowned. Horn had been high in the Martian security police, one of Slesar's top men. Now Horn turned out to be a spy for Earth. Why hadn't she been told? Was Green losing his trust in her? Hadn't she helped McLean and Sanderson escape from Mars? Her short tunic shimmered as she began to pace the floor. She stopped short as a hum splashed through the room. She went quickly to the door and pressed a red button on the wall. But the vibration of the elevator did not reach her ears. Puzzled, she opened the door, stepped into the marble hall. She shrugged, started to return to her apartment when the sound of footsteps on the stairs halted her. She waited. He came into view, Harry Horn. There was no mistaking his face. It had flashed on and off the Telecaster throughout the day. "Brickle," he said, coming up to her. His white coveralls were spotted with grime. There was a dark bruise on his right cheek. "Yes," she said. "I'm Harry Horn." "I know. You've got to help me." His voice was urgent, pleading. He brushed past her, into her room. He walked in after him, shut and locked the door, leaned her back against it. "You can't stay here," she said. "Are you alone?" "Yes," she said. "I'm alone." He went through the apartment, returned to the front room. "I had to make sure." He sank into the low divan, covered his face with his hands. She walked towards him. "You can't stay here," she repeated. He looked up at her, his eyes frightened. "Do you have any idea of what Slesar will do to me once he gets his fat hands around my throat? He won't kill me right away." "Why come to me? You can help me." "What can I do?" "You can help me get away. A turbo-engine spaceship. That's all I need. It's small and fast." "But why come to me? You haven't explained." "You helped McLean and Sanderson." "How do you know this?" "We're both in the same organization, but not in the same unit. The leader of my unit instructed me to go to you." "I see. Who is your leader?" "I can't tell you. You know that. I wouldn't ask you your leader's name." Lynn shrugged slim shoulders. "It wouldn't make any difference. He's not stationed on Mars." Horn jumped to his feet. "You will help me?" "If I can." "Can you get me the ship?" "I suppose. But we'll have to wait for night. It's dangerous to do anything now. 10,000 credits. Slesar wants you awful bad. He offered 5 for both McLean and Sanderson." "I was very close to Slesar in the security police. I know too much." "We all make mistakes." "I envy your logic, but I can't see it that way. I was considered too good an agent to make a mistake." "It's too late to cry over it now. When it is dark, I'll contact a friend and have the spaceship ready." Horn grinned. "You're still not sure of me?" "It isn't that. But you don't belong to my unit. We can't name names to outsiders." "You're right, of course. You've been well trained." "Are you hungry?" "Yes." She set food in front of him and watched him eat. "What is Slesar like?" she asked. "I've heard of him." "Cruel," he said. "A sadist. Death is the easy way out when you're in Slesar's hands." "It'll soon be dark," she said. He stood up, his hunger satisfied. "Tell me," he said, "was it difficult getting Sanderson and McLean out of Mars?" "No," she said, "not difficult at all." "Good." He went to the interphone. He dialed, spoke. "You may come up now." "What are you doing?" Her face paled. He turned to her, smiling. "Slesar was wondering how Sanderson and McLean escaped. You were on the master list of suspects. I was waiting for you to confess." Lynn stiffened. It was a trick." "That's right, Brickle. Too bad. You're too pretty to die." That was a message to Slesar." "Yes. He'll be here shortly." Lynn slipped a hand in the pocket of her tunic, brought out a small blaster. "Don't be a fool," Horn said. "Maybe you'll be spared. Why take your life? Just tell all you know." Lynn smiled. "I wasn't thinking of taking my life, but yours." Horn frowned. "Don't be an idiot." He advanced toward her. Lynn shook her head slowly. "Now it's my turn to be clever." Horn's face went wild. "You can't escape Slesar. Listen to me." She blasted him. Lynn opened the door. Slesar stood there, fat and ugly. There were 2 men of the security police with him. "Come in," she invited. They came in. She shut the door. Slesar looked down at the dead Harry Horn. "You said dead or alive," Lynn reminded Slesar. "You owe me 10,000 credits." "What happened?" Slesar snapped at her. His flesh-bedded eyes studied her. "He came to me for help. I had to bide my time. I told him I'd help him. I was waiting for the chance to get to you. He was by the interphone a few minutes ago. It was the chance I needed. I pulled my blaster, covered him. He made a dash for freedom, so I had to kill him." "This is crazy," one of the men said. "Horn must have had a confession. But what do we now do for evidence?" "Shut up," Slesar snapped. "Your word is good, isn't it, Slesar?" Lynn said. "What do you mean?" "The 10,000 credits. As a loyal citizen, I've earned them." "You'll get your credits," Slesar snarled, frustration in his eyes. "I know I will," Lynn said, smiling.
The end. Subscribe for your daily stories of futures past. And now, for the next story.
Nothing, by Donald A. Wollheim, writing as Martin Pearson, originally published in Astonishing Stories, October 1942. Narrated by Tom Trussel. The little man with the grey beard stared at me, and I stared back at him. "This is getting us nowhere," I remarked. "Nowhere at all." He nodded and sat down on the hard stone. We were trapped under the building. The house had come down over us when the bomb landed in the street. The rest of the tenants were probably away or dead. Apparently only the little old man who lived on the second floor rear and I had gotten down to the bomb-proof cellar in time, and now we were trapped. "We'll have to wait until they dig us out," I said. We couldn't possibly dig our own way out. Too much blocked us in. We were buried beneath tons of brick, rubbish and beams. They were probably busy in the streets outside, trying to rescue the people in other, less damaged buildings. Then again, there might be fire, and the noise effectively blocked any chance on their hearing us. I saw him only by the light of my little pocket flash. That wouldn't last very long. Our space was remarkably limited. The shelter had been part of a cellar. It had been blocked off and roofed over, but even so, part of it fell in, the part with the supplies and stuff, the part opening on the exit. "Well," I said, just to say something, "what do we do now? Sit around, wait to die?" The little old man wrinkled his brow in thought. He didn't seem too worried about dying. I guess when you're his age and have a long grey beard, you get reconciled to the prospect. But I was young, and frankly I didn't like the idea at all. "I think I know a way," the little old man said finally. "But it will seem like madness. Probably it is. It's never been tried. It may never work." I seized him by the lapels. "Anyway, it's better than none. I'd rather die trying than sitting down moping my life away. Tell it to me." "You won't laugh? You'll take whatever I say seriously?" the little old man asked anxiously. I saw he didn't want to die the object of scorn, and I saw also that he must have something pretty odd up his sleeve. "No," I answered, "you won't hear a peep out of me." "Then," said the old man, "if you can prepare yourself, you could walk out through the rocks." In spite of my promise, I gasped. But then I squelched myself, and thought that if I was with the lunatic, I might as well make the most of it. He was now the other half of my universe, and so standards had changed. Facing death, any straw will do. "Proceed," I said. "Explain further." "Rocks," said the little old man. I guess he must have been a scientist of some sort. "And all other matter are composed of nothing mainly, with a little vibration thrown in." I kept my mouth shut. I wasn't going to say anything to the contrary, even if he claimed black was white. "Matter," he went on, "is composed entirely of atom. Atoms are broken down to electrons and protons and their kin. They, in turn,
appear to be nothing but charges of electricity, charges of energy, not matter. So that all matter is really just a manifestation of energy in a peculiar state of stress. I waited. This made sense. I began to recognize some of the things I had learned years ago in high school physics. Between the vortices of energy which make up the building blocks of matter, there are comparatively vast stretches of just plain empty space. Within the atom, almost all is vacuum. Between molecules, more vacuum. In a so-called solid mass, it could be demonstrated that less than a quadrillionth part of its mass has any reality, and that only in the form of disturbances of energy. And that figure is grossly exaggerated. I waited. This was still making sense. And anyway, when you're hopelessly trapped, there is no sense in being impatient. If, went on the professor, you understand this and project the picture of it in your mind, you can mentally resolve all things into swirls of nothingness, into less than air. If you can do so, you can attain complete control over your own body, for we alone are able to control our own masses by means of will. And if you can picture these masses of rock as pools of nothing, and yourself as the same, you can pass yourself through these rocks as a whiff of smoke in air. You can re-visualize yourself as solid outside this trapping pile. I thought about it. Wild it was, and yet based on real reasoning. If you will give your mind to me, let me hypnotize you with your cooperation. I think I can cause that to happen. You will then pass through the rocks and appear outside. Then you will send for me, he said. I thought that over. Why don't you do it yourself? I asked. I am old, and it is better done with an outside subject. Do not forget that this has never been done. Okay, start, I said, suddenly making up my mind. I didn't want to die, and I would do anything, however wild, to avoid it. When one sits alone in darkness beneath a ruined house and knows that there is no hope, a decision like this comes normally. All is logical according to the conditions given. I gave him my flashlight, and he shone it in my eyes. Then he started weaving it and repeating what he had said about atoms and electrons and masses of nothing. I watched him fascinated, and I thought of little whirlpools in empty black space. I saw flashing ripples on a void. I saw lone lights untended in nothingness and reflected from nothing. And I saw that they were glowing from nothing. Light, just light. I saw a solitary mote pursuing an endless track across a vast area that was utter abyss. Gradually the flashlight seemed to flicker and die. I felt wavy and mist-like. I understood the meaning of matter, and I saw indeed that matter has very little real existence. I felt that I was upon my feet, and there were long columns of imagination having no reality save for endless electric foam. I felt myself moving forward, and I felt other disturbances passing between me and around me and through me. Then I saw the scenes were passing before my vision, and the globules of vacua that were my eyes seemed to register as they passed through other globules of vacua. I saw what seemed like a tiny planet spinning on its axis, while a strange blue sun shone down, and a dozen other planets swirled. I saw a figure indescribable, mounted upon a thing incredible, pursuing at the unknowable across a vast and meaningless place. I saw dozens of things like this, none of which can be described. Once I saw a large machine with churning arms, and it was all bubbly and yet hard and mechanical. All about me moved a great current and a wave of feelingless substance. Then I felt a beating of forces upon me. I felt a hammering at me, and I felt a pressure pushing upon the whirling, imaginary pools of my being, and a curious coldness setting in. I shivered and looked around. I was naked in the middle of the street. The stars were out, and the drone of airplanes audible. People were running up and down, and a hose was playing upon the front of a burning building. The wardens were digging in some ruins with crowbars and shovels.
A man came running up to me and threw a blanket over my trembling shoulders. "Where do you come from? Bomb blow your clothes off? It happens." I pointed to the pile of bricks and junk that marked my house. "There's a man buried in those ruins, but he's alive," I said. "Just trapped. You'll have to dig him out." The warden blew his whistle, and out of the turmoil 3 other men came with picks and equipment and began to dig. But it was 2 days before they finally got to him, and by that time he was dead.
The end. Subscribe for your daily stories of futures past. And now for the next story.
Dogfight, 1973, by Mack Reynolds. Originally published by Imagination Stories of Science and Fantasy, July 1953. Narrated by Tom Trussel. My radar picked him up when he was about 500 miles to my north-northeast and about 45 miles above me. I switched the velocity calculator on him as fast as I could reach it. The enemy ship was doing 16, possibly even 16 and a half. I took the chance that it was the most likely an Iver interceptor at that speed and punched out a temporary evasion pattern with my right hand, while with my left I snapped an Iver K-12 card into my calculator, along with its estimated speed, altitude, and distance. It wasn't much to go on as yet, but he couldn't have much more on me, if as much. Inwardly I congratulated myself on the quick identification I'd managed. He was near enough now for my visor screen to pick him up. At least he was alone, that was something. My nearest squadron mate was a good minute and a half away. It might as well have been the century. Now this is what is always hard to get over to a civilian, the time element. Understand, it will take me a while to tell this, but it all took less than 60 seconds to happen. He had guessed my evasion pattern already, either guessed it or had some new calculator that was far and beyond anything our techs were turning out. I could tell he'd anticipated me by the bong-sonic roll he slipped into. I quickly punched up a new pattern based on the little material I had in the calculator. At least I'd caught the roll. I punched that up, hurriedly, slipped it into the IBM, guessed that his next probability was a pass, took a chance on that and punched it in. I was wrong there. He didn't take this opportunity for a front-on pass. He was either newly out of their academy or insultingly confident. My lips felt tight as I cancelled the frontal pass card, punched up 2 more to take its place. The base supervisor cut in on the phone. "It looks like old Dimitri himself, Jerry, and is flying one of the new K-12A models. Go get him, boy." I felt like snapping back. He knew better than to break in on me at a time like this. I opened my mouth, then shut it again. Did he say K-12A? Did he say K-12A? I squinted at the visor screen. The high tail, the canopy, the oddly shaped wing tanks. I'd gone off on the identification. I slapped another evasion pattern into the controls, a standard set. I had no time to punch up an improvisation. But he was on me like a wasp. I rejected it, threw in another set. Reject. Another. Even as I worked, I kicked the release on my own calculator, dumped it all, selected like a flash an Iver K-12A card and what other estimations I could make while my mind was busy with a full-time job of evasion. My hands were still making the motions, my fingers were flicking here, there, my feet touching here, there, but my heart wasn't in it. He already had such an advantage that it was all I could do to keep him in my visor screen. He was to the left, to the right. I got him for a full quarter second in the wires, but the autogunner was too far behind, much too far. His own guns flicked red. I punched 6 buttons, slapped levers, tried to scoot for home. To the left of my cubicle, 2 lights went yellowish, and at the same time my visor screen went dead. I was blind. I sank back in my chair, helpless. The speed indicator wavered, went slowly, deliberately to 0. The altimeter died, the fuel gauge. Finally, even the dozen or so trouble indicators here, there, everywhere about the craft. $15 million worth of warcraft was being shot into wreckage. I sat there for a long, long minute and took it. Then I got to my feet and wearily opened the door of my cubicle. Sergeant Walters and the rest of the maintenance crew were standing there. They could read in my face what had happened. The sergeant began. "Captain, I grunted at him. "Never mind, Sergeant. It had nothing to do with the ship's condition." I turned to head for the operations office. Bill Dixon strolled over from the direction of his own cubicle. "Somebody said you had just had scramble with old Dimitri himself." "I don't know," I said. "I don't know if it was him or not. Maybe some of you guys can tell a man's flying, but I can't." He grinned at me. "Shot you down, eh?" I didn't answer. He said, "What happened?" I thought it was an Ivar K-12, and I put that card in my calculator. Turned out it was one of those new models, K-12A. That was enough, of course. Bill grinned at me again. "That's 2 this week. That flak got you near that bridge, and now you get—" "Shut up," I told him. He counted up on his fingers elaborately. "The way I figure it, you lose 1 more ship, and you're an enemy ace." He was irrepressible. "Damn it," I said. "Will you cut it out? I've got enough to worry about without you working me over. This means I'll have to spend another half an hour in operations going over the flight, and that means I'll be late for dinner again, and you know Molly." Bill sobered. "Gee," he said. "I'm sorry. War is hell, isn't it?"
The end. Subscribe for your daily stories of futures past. And now, for the next story.
The Futile Flight of John Arthur Benn by Richard Wilson, writing as Edward Halibut. Originally published in Infinity Science Fiction, February 1956. Narrated by Tom Trussel. By putting himself into reverse, the doom-intended man left the 20th century far ahead. 1956 was a good year to get out of. John Arthur Benn watched the roaring 20s go by and the gay 90s backwards, and wondered how it would be to pilot a riverboat on the Mississippi, or to fight under John Paul Jones. Before he was really aware of it, he was for a speeding second a contemporary of another John, Smith, and thought about the life of the Redman before the colonists began changing things around. By that time the scenery had begun to get monotonous, just shrinking trees, and John Arthur Benn swung over into lateral. Ah, England! There went another namesake, Ben Jonson, and in a very little while he considered slowing down to meet still another. But King Arthur flashed past and into a womb in West Wales just as John was convulsed by a sneeze. It was quite draughty, and he should have dressed more warmly. And as he stuffed his handkerchief back in his pocket, he caught just a tantalizing glimpse of an interesting druid ceremony. John Arthur Benn blacked out somewhere in the limbo of the pre-Christian era, as he had been warned he might, and when he came to, he found himself lying in a rather uncomfortable heap with his head in a mushroom patch. The mushrooms and the trees around him weren't shrinking any more, so John knew he'd stopped, or at least was going very slowly. After a while he decided he wasn't going at all, and got to his feet. It seemed very pleasant here, in the woods, so he found a fallen tree to sit on, and took a wrapped sandwich and a small vacuum bottle of coffee out of his pocket. When he'd finished his meal, he walked to a stream nearby, rinsed the bottle, tossed the waxed paper onto the water to be carried away, and pocketed the vacuum bottle. Now he thought, what? This was scarcely dinosaur country. At this point a wild boar chased him up a tree. To be killed by a boar would be ignominious, after all this, although the animal was well enough tusked to have done the job. and so John Arthur Benn climbed to a high branch where the boar's persistence forced him to spend the night. He slept somehow, and, with the closing of his conscious mind, the one that wanted to meet a dinosaur in fatal combat, the conventional subconscious, which also sought suicide but in a more familiar way, shifted him out of reverse. When he awoke, he was back in 1956, in Philadelphia. Irrevocably, John Arthur Benn knew. He went home and hanged himself in a closet.
The end. Subscribe for your daily stories of futures past. And now, for the next story.
Printcrime by Cory Doctorow. Originally published in Nature magazine, January 2006. Narrated by Tom Trussel. The text copyright 2006 by Cory Doctorow. The coppers smashed my father's printer when I was 8. I remember the hot cling film and the microwave smell of it, and Da's look of ferocious concentration as he filled it with fresh goop, and the warm, fresh-baked feel of the objects that came out of it. The coppers came through the door with truncheons swinging, one of them reciting the terms of the warrant through a bullhorn. One of Da's customers had shopped him. The eye-police paid in high-grade pharmaceuticals, performance enhancers, memory supplements, metabolic boosters, the kind of things that cost a fortune over the counter, the kind of things you could print at home if you didn't mind the risk of having your kitchen filled with a sudden crush of big, beefy bodies, hard truncheons whistling through the air, smashing anyone and anything that got in the way. They destroyed Grandma's trunk, the one she'd brought from the old country. They smashed our little refrigerator and the purifier unit over the window. My Tweety bird escaped death by hiding in a corner of his cage as a big booted foot crushed most of it into a sad tangle of printer wire. Da. What they did to him. When he was done, he looked like he'd been brawling with an entire rugby side. They brought him out the door and let the newsies get a good look at him as they tossed him in the car. All the while a spokesman told the world that my Da's organised crime bootlegging operation had been responsible for at least 20 million in contraband, and that my Da, the desperate villain, had resisted arrest. I saw it all from my phone, in the remains of the sitting room, watching it on the screen and wondering how, just how, anyone could look at our little flat and our terrible manky estate and mistake it for the home of an organised crime kingpin. They took the printer away, of course, and displayed it like a trophy for the newsies. Its little shrine in the kitchenette seemed horribly empty. When I roused myself and picked up the flat and rescued my poor peeping Tweety bird, I put a blender there. It was made out of printed parts, so it would only last a month before I'd need to print new bearings and other moving parts. Back then, I could take apart and reassemble anything that could be printed. By the time I turned 18, they were ready to let Da out of prison. I'd visited him 3 times, on my 10th birthday, on his 50th, and when Ma died. It had been 2 years since I'd last seen him, and he was in bad shape. A prison fight had left him with a limp, and he looked over his shoulder so often that it was like he had a tic. I was embarrassed when the minicab dropped us off in front of the estate, and tried to keep my distance from this ruined, limping skeleton as we went inside and up the stairs. "Lainey," he said as he sat me down, "you're a smart girl, I know that. You wouldn't know where old Da could get a printer and some goop." I squeezed my hands into fists so tight my fingernails cut into my palms. I closed my eyes. "You've been in prison for 10 years, Da. 10 years. You're going to risk another 10 years to print out more blenders and pharma, more laptops and designer hats?" He grinned. I'm not stupid, Laney. I've learned my lesson. There's no hat or laptop that's worth going to jail for. I'm not going to print none of that rubbish, never again. He had a cup of tea, and he drank it now like it was whiskey, a sip, and then a long, satisfied exhalation. He closed his eyes and leaned back in his chair. Come here, Laney, let me whisper in your ear. Let me tell you the thing that I decided when I spent 10 years in lock-up. Come here and listen to your stupid da. I felt a guilty pang about ticking him off. He was off his rocker, that much was clear. God knew what he went through in prison. What, da? I said, leaning in close. Laney, I'm going to print more printers. Lots more printers. One for everyone. That's worth going to jail for. That's worth anything.
The end. Subscribe for your daily stories of futures past. If you're not subscribed, why ever not? It's free.